All right, everybody. For those of you who don't know, my name is Michael Forrest, and welcome to I Am Possible. Now, before we get going, I'm going to ask you guys if you cannot send me any text messages while I'm up here. I'd really appreciate that because when you're up here and you're doing the whole hosting thing, and all of a sudden the text comes in, it's like hitting a wall. It can really throw you off. It can really distract you. So I'd appreciate it if you don't do that. Also, you're going to see this top step here. If you could stay clear of this, that'd be great because this way nobody blocks this big display behind me, and it gives me a little bit of room to move around and do the whole hosting thing, right? Also, now you're going to notice at the very top of your menu wheel is a microphone icon. When that microphone icon is clear, that means we can hear everything that's happening in your environment. And I do mean everything. You'd be surprised about some of the things we've heard over the years here. But yeah, so we've gone ahead and we've turned this to red, and this means you're muted. So if somebody comes in your space and says, "Hey, are you still on that thing?" Don't worry about that because we're not going to hear any of that. Likewise, if you have maybe a barking dog in the background, you're not going to face social ruin back at the campfire by becoming known as the avatar that suddenly started barking during the event, right? That would be embarrassing. We don't want that to happen. So we've gone ahead and we've muted you all. And but just because you're muted doesn't mean you can't participate, doesn't mean you can't express yourself. You're going to notice that there is a pink cheek smiley face in your menu wheel. And when you press on it, your emoji panel is going to open up the air in front of you as if by magic. And if somebody shares something deep, something powerful, and it starts to build up, it starts to resonate, you can just let it out just like that, right? Maybe somebody tells a story today where they swing across some quicksand, Tarzan style, right? And you're all very impressed. You can throw up the applause like that and encourage the person to keep on going, right? Likewise, if maybe somebody tells you a story that resonates, with you, and you just want to show them some support, you can throw up these smiley faces like, "Yeah, man, I'm feeling that. That's right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I know. I hate when that happens." Or you can maybe somebody's telling a sad story and you can show them the frowns like, "Man, I know you're going to be bringing me down today. Don't need that." Maybe somebody tells a funny story, right? And you can throw up a silly faced emoji like this, right? And then there's this thing. This is by far the most distracting of all the emojis, and that's exactly how we're going to use it today. We're not going to use it to get on the list or ask a question. We're going to show you how to do that in just a minute. But we're going to use this as a way to get my attention in the event that, like, maybe, my voice suddenly gets choppy, or you see me waving my hands around and then those sounds coming out, or maybe the moderators have had enough and they decided to burn down the display behind me. That's happened before, actually, and we really should have put more thought into this slide because I use that bit a lot. And, we've got the flames on it. So that's like, it's maybe kind of confusing there. But yeah, that's the general idea. So you're going to use that to get my attention. Now, if I only see one of them go up, I'm going to keep on going because it might be somebody messing around. But if I see, 3 or 4 of you doing it, I'm like, all right, there's a serious problem that we need to address. And then we'll stop the event and we'll try to get to the bottom of whatever's happening. You could also press the X button in the middle of the emoji panel. This will make the emoji panel disappear completely. You make it go away. But it's a good idea to leave it open during events like this because, one, it gives me feedback. It lets me know how I'm doing. It encourages the people that are sharing stories here today. And in addition to that, it's really just great to let people know what's around you, know what's happening, right? So, like, if the person next to you starts going like this, that means they found something funny, right? And you may not agree. You might be like, "Whoa, that's not funny at all. Why are you laughing at that? I'm going to go stand over here." And you can totally do that because this is VR, except maybe like, not this top step area because we agreed to that. That's going to be like our sacred pact. That's going to be our bond audience. That's going to be our agreement, right? All right. And that's basically it. Now, let me get a little bit into what I Am Possible is about. All right. And I Am Possible, we started this as a one-time event, but it went really well, so we kept it going. It's essentially an event where we're going to share stories about where you yourself, or somebody you know, or maybe a story you read or a movie you saw where somebody overcame really difficult odds to do what they or the people around them thought was impossible. All right. And the way we're going to do this is you're going to notice on your lower right, you're going to see a raise hand button appear as if by magic, because that's what magic looks like in VR. All right. And if you want to share a story today, you're going to press that raise hand button. You're going to get on our list, right? And once you're on our list, we're going to call you in the gaps between stories because you know what? I'm going to let you in on something here. An alt space event host can't stand pauses, just can't stand it. All right. So if nobody gets on that list, I'm going to keep going with some stories of my own. And just to start you guys out, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history that I have with this word impossible. Because the truth is, I can't stand the word impossible. Really can't. And let me tell you how that happened. When I was a kid, I was growing up in Brooklyn, New York. And in Brooklyn, New York, there's this one summer where I had these bullies that would chase me down every single day into this alleyway and they'd beat me up. Right. And, I tried running. And you know what they told me? They say, don't run. Escape is impossible. Right. And I thought I knew what that word meant. Escape meant that, impossible meant that you couldn't do the thing. Right. I tried to fight back and they told me, don't fight back. It's impossible. Right. So, again, I thought I knew what this word meant. So, I eventually gave up. I just kind of, just started taking it. But around that time, my dad, he owned a bar. And a man came into the bar one day and he's carrying a shopping bag. And, he had a few drinks. And when he went to go settle his tab out, he asked my dad, he says, do you have any kids at home? And my dad says, well, yes, I have two boys. So, my daddy says, okay. And then the other guy says, well, I think they'll enjoy this. And he picks up the shopping bag and he puts it on the bar, right? And he pushes it across the bar at him, right? And my dad, he looks into this shopping bag like he's maybe probably thinking he's getting the biggest tip he's ever seen in his life. Maybe it's a bag of money, right? But instead, what he sees is a stack of Batman comics, right? And well, he took those comics home and he slid the first of many under my door. And that morning when I read this book, this comic, I didn't read it like a kid typically reads a comic. I read it like an instruction manual, right? And that day I modified a backpack, and I put a drawstring on. I filled it up with these glass marbles, and I went out to play and do the things that kids do, right? And those bullies, they chased me down the alleyway again. But while they were chasing me, I reached back and I pulled on that drawstring that I made, and I pulled on it really hard, and I could hear like the glass marbles clattering on the concrete behind me. But you know what? I kept on running. And for the very first time, I made it to the garages. And just past the garages, there was this stone wall, and I scrambled up that, and I climbed on top of the garage, and I looked back down the alleyway, and you know what I saw? I saw all those kids falling down, trying to get up, and falling again, and I started giggling. I mean, in my life so far, that was probably the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And, all of a sudden, I stopped laughing because it suddenly dawned on me I had done what they said I could not do. I had done what they said was impossible. And now, clearly, this word did not mean what people thought it meant. So what I did was I went to the library. I thought I had an obligation to do this. It turns out this isn't exactly legal, but there's a statute of limitations that's gone up, so I can finally confess what I did. I went into the library, and with a black magic marker in every dictionary in that building, I crossed out the word impossible because I thought it was a dangerous word. Now, ever since then, when I hear this word, I hear it like it's a dare. Right. When I hear the word impossible, that just tells me to keep on going. Right. So, so that's the kind of thing. Now, if you guys have a story where you've overcome difficult odds, or, somebody overcame difficult odds, or maybe it was in a book or something like that you've read. Oh, and by the way, all of our events get recorded and they get put out on YouTube if they're any good. If we have some usable content, it usually takes about a couple of weeks. And so you'll notice Raven and I floating in the air over there. Now, what you want to do is, if you want to feel YouTube famous, right, or VR famous, you can turn around and be like, hey, YouTube, how's it going? And just wave on out to YouTube. We got a lot of people in here today. We got Bradley, we got David, we got, we got Roku, we got Nick, and we also got Anxious Cow, we've got Gabby, we've got Wolfies. Got a lot of people in here today. We've got Hummingbird in here and, Morgan Forrest. All right, so, so if you want to feel, you want to feel VR famous, you can turn around and wave on out there. But if you do share a story today and it ends up being like too personal, you don't want to, you're like, oh no, my mom's going to see this. What am I going to do? Just come up and see us at the end of the event and tell us, and we'll edit that out of the footage. Okay. So this way, if you share something, because sometimes it gets a little personal in here and people are like, oh no, I've overshared. What do I do? And you just tell us to edit it out. We'll just take it out and make sure it doesn't go up. Okay. All right. So now again, if you want to get on our list, you just press that raise hand button and you'll get on our list and we'll pick you up in the pauses between stories. But since I don't see anybody on that list yet, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on going. All right. Now, in the early days of the U.S., there was a gold miner, right, during the gold rush, right? And he came into possession of all things, a gold mine. Imagine that, a gold miner with a gold mine. It's fantastic. So he works this mine each and every day, right? And he's like, and at the end of every day, he goes into town, there's a saloon there, and he goes in to have a few drinks and unwind, right? And every day in there, a man comes up to him and asks him, hey, will you sell that mine to me? And the miner's like, there's no way I'm going to sell that mine. That mine is mine. And I'm going to, because I know there's gold in there. I can feel it in my bones. I'm never going to sell. And, so he'd go back and he'd work that mine. Every day he came into that saloon afterwards. But gradually over time, he started looking a little bit more beat up. He started looking really haggard, like he was starting to get discouraged. And every day this man's offer became a little bit more tempting. But he still told them, this mine is mine. I don't know if he actually said that. I just think it sounds cool. And so what happened was it was one day, and we've all had days like this where everything that can go wrong does go wrong, right? Like those days where, his fuses were wet and his pickaxes were broken and, his mine carts were tipping over. He was just having a bad day. And when he got into the, into the saloon there and he had a few drinks there, the man came up to him and, he was looking this more beat up than you'd ever seen him, and the man comes up to the miner and says, will you sell it? And the guy says, you know what? I'm finally ready. I'm going to sell it to you. And he sold it to him at a good price. Now, what happened was a few days later, the miner came into that saloon and he saw the man he sold the mine to celebrating. All right. There was music playing. He was buying everybody drinks. He was having a good time. And now the miner went up to this guy and he says, listen, hey, what's the occasion? And the man he sold the mine to says, well, the mine you sold me, well, we found gold. And the miner goes, oh, man. And he looks down and goes, you got to tell me, how close was I? I got to know. And the man says, well, we only dug about 3 feet. Now, for the rest of that miner's life, every single time he faced a challenge, every time he was about to quit, every time he was about to give up, he would tell himself, I'm 3 feet from gold. And now this miner went on to be very successful in his life because you know what? Life is a lot like that. That moment when you're about to quit, that moment when you're about to give up, that moment when you're about to throw it all in. You know, if you keep on going, right? Very often, that moment where you just push through, that moment of discouragement, that's often the times where you actually break through and figure out how to do the thing. That's when you break through and figure out how to get the thing done, right? All right, let's see. I see a lot of you are texting out there today. Okay, that's cool. Let's see if anybody wants to share a story like that today, where you've overcome difficult odds yourself, or you maybe knew somebody that did. And again, it doesn't have to be in the real world. Like if the world we're standing in, this is the Ravenhall Forum, and you know what? There was a time where we used that awful word impossible in this space because, well, we didn't think it was possible at the time because we built this on an Apple iPad, right, and an old laptop that couldn't run Unity for more than 15 minutes. Right. And the whole time doing it, we got very frustrated because, we were really pushing the edge of what can be done. And, we kept saying it's impossible. We can't ever join this fire pit up here with this disc here. We can't do it. Right. But, we kept on going and we found a way to get it done. And, a lot of times, like, it's like that. So now we have the Ravenhall Forum where we can gather under the stars here and trade stories with each other, and we did that thing. So again, it doesn't have to be in the real world. Like maybe you were, building a difficult world and you didn't think you could do it and you got it done. We're going to want to hear about that kind of stuff. So you go ahead and you press that raise hand button and you'll get on our list here. We'll call on you and you'll come up to the stage area here and you'll feel VR famous. It'll be great. All right. But in the meantime, while we wait, I'm going to tell you guys another one because if you don't, maybe you don't got a lot of talkers here today and we got to keep it going because Alt Space event hosts can't stand pauses, just can't deal with them. That awkward silence and this void at all costs. All right. But this next one, this was took place in the early 1980s where there was a couple and they had a small boy who was 4 years old. And at the age of 4, he can already speak 3 languages. I mean, this was an impressive kid, right? And his parents were, rightfully very proud of him. But they noticed that he started slurring his words. He started bumping into stuff. Something was wrong. He just started school around then and he was getting into fights with the other children. And, his parents just knew, like, this isn't our kid. There's something going on. So they went to the doctor and the doctor gave him a bunch of tests and he was diagnosed with a disease that I have no business trying to pronounce, but it's commonly known as ALD. And they told him it's a degenerative disease and your son's only going to live about 2 years, right? There's only, 2 years left there. And so, go home and spend some time with him. And here's a number of support group, and, this is, you got to face this. And you know what the parents did? The parents said, no, this isn't happening. So they went to other doctors who told them the same thing. And they kept saying no. Right. And then they got access to a medical library. And I mean, they only had a high school education with regard to the maths and sciences. Right. But they started going into this medical library and they started reading about all these, animal experimentation things that went on. And they started studying. They gradually learned the language, math, science, chemistry. And as they explored this, they came across an oil that has the property of separating the lipids from the blood. And they thought this would stop the disease. So what they did was they went to the doctors and they were very excited. And the doctor said, listen, you guys are a couple of lay people. I understand, you want hope, but you got to really accept what's happening here, And the parents, they said no, right? And they started giving the oil to their son and then they had his blood tested and they found that the progression of the disease was actually slowing down. So they started to contact all these pharmacists and chemists and stuff, right, looking for somebody to refine this oil. And this is back in the days before there was email, right, back when phone calls were very expensive, and they were contacting everybody all over the world that they, would you please produce this oil for us? And of the over 100 people that they contacted, one day one of their letters landed on the desk of a chemist who was about to retire. All right, it was going to be his last day. And he read this note and he's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do this. And he contacted the family and he says, listen, I'll make this stuff for you, but we're going to have to call it something. And I'd like to name it after your son. So they called it Lorenzo's Oil. And they made a movie out of this, actually, if you ever catch it. It's a pretty good one. And, what happened was they produced this oil. They gave it to the son. And the son lived to the age of 28, where he died of complications that rose from pneumonia. The complications were related to some of the damage that was done by the disease early on. But during the son's lifetime, the parents did not stop there. Or what they did was anyone that was found with the markers of the blood were contacted and they were offered this oil. And the people that used it were able to postpone the onset of the disease for many, many years. And during this whole time, the doctors were saying, you listen, you guys, this is quack medicine. But eventually, near the names would well, the names just suddenly escaped me. It was Anime. Yeah, their names were Anime, and they what they did was they came into you know the doctors finally came to admit that there is something about this oil, and they are like presently studying what it is about that actually that actually prevents the disease from fully forming. All right. So because one ordinary couple, ordinary people, just like you and me, just because they refused to accept their son's fate, just because they said no, just because they kept going, right, that they actually achieved the impossible, and they got to keep their son in their life a little bit longer, a lot longer, actually. So that's a a good example of like I said, when somebody tells you can't do a thing, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't do it. All right. So if anybody else has any stories that they like to share where they overcame difficult odds, or they did something that they or the people around them thought was impossible, just go ahead and press that raise hand button, and you'll get on our list there, and we'll call on you. You'll feel VR famous. It'll be a very special moment. But again, we don't seem to have a lot of talkers here today, so I'm gonna keep on going. That's what I'm gonna do. You guys want to hear me talk? That's what I'm gonna do. Best way to shut me up is raise your hand and tell one of your own stories. All right. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna tell you one from my own life. All right. And this one is basically this is how I actually came to be in VR. Many years ago, I was living in Brooklyn, New York, and I was working from home, so I was at home an awful lot. I didn't have to go out that much because most of my work stuff was in the house, and I was living at home there. Now, I used to go out with my parents though every week for breakfast, and they would notice that I was starting to act a little bit strange. Like I was starting to slur my words. I was having trouble finding words, and I started taking me like all day just to write a check. I couldn't figure out how to do it. I was like, I remember it's this something here, and something was definitely wrong. So when my parents came to see me one day, they noticed like there was something really weird about the air in my apartment. They couldn't figure it out. It was like, like my mom said, it was like a presence. And I know that sounds like, oh, the place is haunted. There are ghosts everywhere. But no, it was just, there was something weird about it. You could kind of feel it. And so they had the air tested, and they got me out of there. Now, when they had the air tested, the air sample that they took, only 10% of it was actually breathable oxygen. The rest of it was made up of a mixture of two of the most dangerous molds. If you guys have ever heard of black mold, all right, that's what was in there. And I had been in this environment for a long time. But the second I got out of there, my body started to fight back. My body was like, all right, that's it. We're cleaning this stuff up. And what happened was it took the form of me getting racing heart, where my heart would race for like 20 hours a day really fast. Picture running as fast as you can and not being able to stop. That's what it was like, right? I started getting dizzy all the time too. Like I remember like I was, standing in the bathroom and I fell down and I hit my head on the sink. It was really bad. I was like picking out places like where I was like, you know what? It might be better if they find me over here. That might be less shocking. And what happened was I spent the next year laying on the floor, right, on my back. Right. And I had to get rid of everything I owned too. I had like a 5-monitor computer screen, all my clothes, everything. And I'm just laying there with like this little radio to keep me company. Right. It was a rough time. And during this time, my folks, they got me an Apple iPad so that I could reconnect the world. Right. And, get in contact with people, make friends, stuff like that, and, that kind of kept my mind going during that time. And during this time, I saw an ad for an Oculus Go. And I was like, well, that looks really cool. I've always been into the idea of VR, and I figured, let me try this. Maybe this will give me some mobility, right? And I've been reading about Altspace for a while. If you've been to Go Time, you've heard this part of the story where I come into Altspace for the very first time, and the first thing I do is I look up, right, and I see that sky, and it looks like a real sky to me, right? So I start volunteering to Altspace, and give back, and all of a sudden I had somewhere to be. Now, you guys who've been staying at home because of COVID, you know what this is like, right? Where you start losing track of the days. You don't know what day it is. Like, oh, wait, I think it's Monday, but it's actually Sunday. And what's going on? You start to lose track of that kind of stuff. But when I started volunteering for Altspace, suddenly I had somewhere I needed to be, right? It's like, I got to be there at Tuesday at 7 o'clock. I got an audience that's depending on me, right? And the first time I started hosting, right, I'd stand up in front of the screen. I felt bad for my early audiences because I'd be like, repeatedly. I just kept doing that, and I don't think my audience cares for it too much. But I kept on showing up. On my end of things, what I was experiencing was my heart was going like really fast and wouldn't stop, right? So like long after the show, it just kept going. But gradually over time, that started happening less, right? And then I wanted to build worlds, but that meant being near a computer, and that meant I had to get out of bed, right? And I'd been in bed for like over a year and a half, actually closer to 2 years. And so I got up and I crossed over there and I sat down at the computer. And the first couple of times, man, I felt like I was going to fall right out of the chair. Very nearly did a couple of times, but I kept on going. I kept on building. And we're going to have like an event coming out soon where you're going to see the results of some of that work. Even this area that you're seeing now, some of it, was done on that too. And what you're going to find is, I kept on pushing and with having a place to be. And then I started playing Beat Saber. I started playing Echo Arena, right? And I found that VR really increased my mobility by a lot by giving me somewhere I needed to be, and by, getting me more physically active, right? And that helped me push a lot of the stuff out of my body, and I'm feeling better than I have in a really long time, So, basically I kept on going. But, early in those days when I started presenting, I was on an Oculus Go, and there were people in Allspace that, said that that couldn't be done, that my device wasn't reliable enough. First time I actually performed in Allspace, I had somebody texting me messages saying, get off the stage. Right? So they weren't happy about it, but I kept on going, and I kept on doing. Now I've done over 350 events in Allspace. Right. And yeah, so that's it. I am possible. And listen, I don't believe in that word impossible. Right. But I do believe in all of you. All right. Together, you're capable of really great things. Everybody in here is way more capable than they realize, or a lot stronger than you know. All right. Now, if anybody has any stories like that they want to share where they've overcome difficult odds, right, or where they push through to the other side of something, just please press that raise hand button and we'll get you up here. And you can share one of your stories, or, it could be a story of somebody or maybe something you read, or maybe a movie you saw one time, something like that, can do that way. All right. All right, it's gonna be all me today. Okay, that's cool. I can do that. I can work with this. There's no pressure. I'm prepared. I can do this. All right, I'm gonna share with you another one that comes from my own life because, well, nobody else is doing it, right? You're gonna see that one time I was about 18 years old, somewhere around there, and I had just started getting into like hiking and camping, right? And my friend Chris and I were going up to this place called Lake George, and there was for the few months before leading up to this trip, there had been a tremendous amount of rain, and we heard that there were like all these waterfalls coming down into the lake. It's supposed to be very beautiful, and we were going to go explore that. So, we set up our campsite and we went out to explore one of these waterfalls. And we're at the top of the waterfall there, and we're, standing around and we're, goofing around and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, the current actually knocked my friend Chris over, and the water carried him right into my legs and knocked me down too. And then we both kind of exploded over the top of the falls, right? And we dropped about 10 feet down in the lake. It was a big splash, right? And, we came up out of the water and we were laughing. We weren't hurt or anything, and we go to get out of the water. And then that's when we stopped laughing because there was a wall of mud and giant boulders that were dropping down as we tried to get up out of the water. And all of a sudden we realized, this is pretty serious. And I looked across the lake and I noticed there was this huge boulder there where our campsite was, and we could see the tents. And I figured, it doesn't look that far. Let's just swim for it. We were both good swimmers. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to swim fully dressed with wearing a pair of construction boots, those steel toe kinds. I mean, look, they look like hiking boots, but they're really not, and that's going to like really weigh you down, right? So like, we kind of like, you don't really swim as much as you kind of drag, it's kind of like that, right? And but we kept on swimming, and we get about the middle of the lake there, and all of a sudden Chris calls out to me, and he sounds like really scared. And so I start treading water. I'm like, what's up? And he goes, I don't think I'm going to make it. And I looked back to where we came from, right, where the waterfall was. And over at the waterfall there, we were faced with the same situation where we may not be able to get out of the water, and we'd have no supplies and no way to call for help. So, and we were halfway across anyway. It's going to be the same distance either way. So I convinced him to keep on going, right? And, so we're going to keep on going and see how far we can get. And so, we dig into it and we keep going. And all of a sudden, I start getting really tired. I don't think I can do it. I start getting pretty discouraged, And what happened was, I kept on pushing myself, And at the time, Chris, right when I thought I couldn't do it anymore, all of a sudden, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Rocky movies, that coach. All of a sudden, my friend Chris, he turned into that. And he starts yelling out stuff. He's like, dig in, man. We can do this. We're going to do this. We're going to beat this thing. And he kept on doing that. And it was like, I don't know, it was really motivating. I guess his adrenaline kicked in. And then I started digging into it, and I started pushing myself, and I kept on going, right? So we kept on going across the water there, and, and we kind of, we're trading back and forth, that encouraging bit. Like, like every time one of us was going to give up, the other person was going, come on, And eventually we pulled ourselves out of the water by that boulder, and we just collapsed. And neither one of us said anything for an hour. Right. And about an hour goes by, and all of a sudden Chris goes, Mike, we made it. Just like that. Right. And we even stayed an extra day because we were so beat up from this. I mean, I think, my life, I think I was the most tired and the most, physical pain I've ever felt, in terms of like, being worn out like that. Right. So it turns out, what I learned from that is that we're capable a lot more than we think we are. And you are too. So if you're ever like, facing something where you think, you're about to not make it, just keep on going. I think you're going to be surprised by what you find. I really do. All right. Well, we are about out of time. So listen, if you've enjoyed our content today, right, please go to altvr.com and go to where it says channels in the upper left and click on channels. When you do that, you're going to be seeing all these all-space event channels, really wonderful ones. And down toward the bottom, it's going to say Ravenhall events, like it says on the back wall there, right? Now, I don't know, they tell us it doesn't mean it to be on the bottom like that. All right, so, okay. But when you press that, you get taken to our event page. And there on the left side, you can press join Discord. And when you press join Discord, you can come and ask us questions, say hello, things like that, or, help us put on events like this. There's that too. But in the upper right there, you're going to see the subscribe button. It's the most important button on the internet. And when you press it, it lets all space know that you enjoy our content, right? And it also, and it makes us feel good because we don't get paid to do this, right? So every time we see that number go up, it's like, it makes it very rewarding, encourages us to keep on going. And also, when you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, we love that. That's like the best, it's really great. So thank you all for coming today. And listen, at the end of our events, we take everybody flying by going to the Ravenhall Flight Academy. And the way we get there is by doing something that we once thought was impossible. These two buttons here. Now, when I press this button here, what's going to happen is you're going to see a Talon ship that's a hovercraft aircraft come up over that wall and fly across the forum space and touch down on that landing pad at the top of the stairs there. Now, when you see this, we're going to take that out to the Ravenhall Flight Academy, and we'll teach you guys how to fly. If you don't know how, if you have any questions, we'll take them there, okay? So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to press this button right here. Here we go.
Ravenhall Talon aircraft en route to your position. Please stay clear of the landing pad. Thank you.
Here it comes. If you look over this wall here, you'll see a Ravenhall Talon hovercraft. Now, again, you can fly these ships, something we once thought was impossible. You now do. And if you want to give that a try, please join us at the Ravenhall Flight Academy by coming up these stairs here, and we'll meet it as it comes down. Now, listen, it is going to get kind of low, but it hasn't hit anybody yet, right? There's been no tragic accidents that we could admit to.
Talon aircraft is now boarding for transport to the Ravenhall Flight Academy. Please step into the blue light. Thank you.
All right, everybody, thanks for coming, and I'll see you next time.